Surprise! Did you really think I wouldn't do a bonus episode as an extra SinMas gift this year? Hello and welcome back to Podfinder. My name is Philip, and I'm here to talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Today's video is a bonus addition to my Merry Little SinMas series, and if you don't know what that means, I suggest checking out the playlists in the description. Basically, over a 7-week period, I'm covering the story of the Rune Lords of Thassilon in the Age of Lost Omens, preparing players and GMs for Revenge of the Rune Lords. Today, I want to cover a very important but mysterious NPC in the Pathfinder setting, one who has haunted the shadows of Paizo products since 2018, and one who plays an important role in the upcoming Revenge of the Rune Lords adventure path. The Ashen Man. The Ashen Man is a champion of apocalypses. His activity on Golarion has been increasing in recent years, drawing more than a little concern from the few scholars who know of him and his machinations. Before that, though, if you enjoy this video and want to hear more Pathfinder lore, consider subscribing or commenting below. Or, if you want to support the channel directly, check out my Patreon. Just $2 a month gets you access to all my scripts, as well as the audio files for all my videos, all of which drop at least a week early. Also, spoiler alert! The story of the Ashen Man has been told in fragments across several Paizo products, including Doomsday Dawn, Malevolence, and the Curtain Call AP. I'll need to spoil some aspects of each of those events. With Doomsday Dawn and Malevolence, the spoilers will be fairly adjacent to the main plot, while with Curtain Call, the spoilers will be largely incidental to the overall story. If you want to go into these products completely blind, stop watching the video when I get to the Past Actions section. With that out of the way, let's dig into the rundown. The Ashen Man is an enigma, a mystery who haunts the fringes of society on Golarion. He's a figure mentioned only in the most esoteric or occult texts, and known only by the scholars who study the eldritch secrets of the end times and the dark tapestry. The Ashen Man is a Hundun, an aberration born outside of space and time which serves as an avatar of entropy and the heat death of the universe. The Hunduns are a manifestation of the primordial nothingness which predates this iteration of the Pathfinder universe. That they exist at all is something of a glitch in the mechanics of the universe, one which reality constantly needs to adjust and account for. Though not undead, they are sustained by the energy of the void. Hunduns are driven by a single purpose: destruction. They are agents of the end of order, the end of life, and the end of everything. They seek to accelerate the destruction of the universe to the point that it is reduced to a swirling pool of unbound energy and matter. The chaos they seek, however, stands in stark contrast to the Maelstrom and the Proteans who inhabit it. While their chaos might result in spontaneous alignments of atoms and small pockets of order and growth, the entropy which the Hunduns seek is formless, inert, and dead. Order of any kind is antithetical to the Hunduns, and they are the enemies of all beings defined by law, from devils and chitons to archons and axiomites. When they operate alone, Hunduns work to undermine peaceful societies with things like war, disorder, and pestilence, their ultimate goal being to accelerate the degradation of organized society. On the rare occasions when they gather in force, Hunduns can set their sights even higher, triggering natural disasters which wipe out whole nations, spreading famines to devastate whole populations, or even rendering entire planets dead via carefully planned localized apocalypses. This is what the Ashen Man is, an agent of entropy who seeks to end all life on Golarion. The Ashen Man specifically is an ally of Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep is the crawling chaos, the faceless sphinx, the haunter in the dark, a Lovecraftian outer god which focuses on the acceleration of the end times, the sharing of dangerous and destructive knowledge, and the spreading of darkness. The Ashen Man has no name beyond his title. He's not a god, and cannot grant spells, but he takes no issue with such worship, so long as his followers advance his goals of chaos and destruction, and spread the rumors of his presence. The Ashen Man, like all Hunduns, has a sense which shows him the possible fates of Golarion. He focuses on the paths which lead to Armageddon, the end of Golarion. As these pathways converge, he appears, so he might directly observe the events which might bring about the end he so desires. Many such convergences have existed throughout Golarion's history, and the Ashen Man can often be found in records of such times, described in accounts from those present at the events. Interestingly, he seems to have a preference for synthetic disasters, those which could have been avoided were it not for the actions of sentient life. Even among these, he takes particular interest in disasters with ties to the Dark Tapestry, or other eldritch planes like Leng or the Dimension of Dreams. Though his will is undeniably malevolent, he's nothing if not patient. For millennia, he's been content to watch and wait, anticipating the moment when the forces of good and order will finally fail, and life on Golarion will at long last come to a violent and sudden end. Appearance and Origins. Like all Hunduns, the Ashen Man cuts a terrifying figure. He stands more than 10 feet tall, looming in the shadows on the edges of an observer's vision. He's enveloped by a flowing cloak, which isn't a worn garment, but part of his body. It's effectively his skin. Within the cloak is a shifting void of chaotic energy, which vaguely resembles a star field, or a gas cloud in space. 2 arms, stained blood red, protrude from his cloak, and one carries a long, twisted staff. The top of this staff is adorned with what appears to be a heart, suspended by strings of splayed organs and sinew, like a corpse caught in the fly of a spider's web. Horrifyingly, this staff, called a strange attractor, is also part of its body, and is entirely constructed from flesh and organs, twisted and hardened into a staff-like shape. The Ashen Man derives his name from his unique pallor. While most Hunduns have cloaks which are dark brown or black, the Ashen Man's often appears as a dull gray. Ashes constantly fall from his body in a slow-moving aura, reminding all those who see him of the destruction which he seeks to bring about. Despite not having a physical mouth, the Ashen Man can speak via telepathy. He tends to move between a whisper and a quiet, steady speaking voice, his tone generally dispassionate and cold. As for where he came from, that's a mystery. Hunduns are capable of reproduction, though it's a rare occurrence. It's possible he was conceived of other Hunduns at some point in the ancient past. Alternatively, he might have simply manifested at the beginning of this iteration of the Pathfinder universe, as a holdover of the nothingness which preceded existence. Either way, before taking an interest in Golarion, he likely spent eons traveling between the Void and the Maelstrom. Hunduns, despite not being undead, are sustained by void energy, and they find the consuming nature of the void to be simultaneously invigorating and searing. The Maelstrom, meanwhile, suits their inherent desire for chaos, though Hunduns in the Maelstrom tend to isolate themselves from the Proteans who call that plane home. The Ashen Man likely spent decades, or even centuries, in quiet contemplation, thinking on the nature of destruction and chaos, before breaking his habit and entering the universe, to observe the destruction of individual worlds, so he might revel in the entropic doom. At some point in the distant past, he came to the planet Golarion to observe what he thought would be the planet's death. When it survived, however, it piqued his interest, in large part due to the large number of potential apocalypses he sensed in its future. He's remained near the planet ever since, carefully observing with rapt attention. Though his patience is great, with each averted catastrophe he grows more desperate for the release which he knows is near. He's even begun to subtly influence events on Golarion, breaking the usual Hundun practice of non-intervention, so he might hurry along the doom which Golarion is owed. Past actions. Again, spoiler warning. I'm about to touch on the events of Doomsday Dawn, Malevolence, and Curtain Call. If you want to go into these products spoiler-free, stop the video now. I'll be keeping things at the surface level, but I'll need to spoil some basic information to provide context to the Ashen Man's behavior and personality. The first time the Ashen Man appeared in a Paizo product that I could find was in 2018 with the release of Sandpoint, Light of the Lost Coast. The random encounter tables for the Sandpoint market describe an interaction with a bald man in a hooded gray robe who offers the PCs a vial filled with ashes. The man explains that the ashes were gathered from the cloak of someone called the Ashen Man, and will grant visions of the eternal which awaits the PCs. Alarmingly, once he hands off the ash vial, the man vanishes, and no one besides the PCs themselves recalls having seen him. If the PCs choose to spread the ashes upon their eyelids, they fall into a brief but deep sleep, during which they receive a vision of the world crumbling to ash over the course of their lifetime. Of course, this was not the first time in Golarion's history when the Ashen Man took interest in the planet. In ancient times, the Ashen Man reached out to a nameless Thassilonian astronomer. This astronomer had been a devotee of Desna, but his faith had lapsed due to the influence of the mysterious entities he'd encountered in the Dark Tapestry, the space between the stars. The Ashen Man, seeing an opportunity, gifted this astronomer an artifact, the Void Mirror, a mysterious device originating from the Dominion of the Black, a malevolent alien faction in the far reaches of space. A militant group of Desnans, called the Order of the Starless Night, recognizing the threat posed by the astronomer, drove him out of Thassilon and pursued him to the lands which would one day become Ravenel. Here, the astronomer activated the mirror and became possessed by a tremendously powerful aberration called Chekuth. Chekuth might have caused devastation on a regional or even global scale had it not been for the actions of the Order of the Starless Night. These Desnans managed to seal the possessed astronomer away underground, and stood vigil for decades over the site before eventually dying out and leaving the site unguarded in obscurity. These events served as the backdrop for the events of the Malevolence adventure. Much, much later, the Ashen Man became directly involved on Golarion again, his attention drawn to the events of the Doomsday Dawn in 4718. The Doomsday Dawn was the culmination of a series of actions undertaken by adventurers between 4707 and 4718, in response to a plot by the corrupted wizard Ramlock. Ramlock had been suffused with the dark energies of the Dominion of the Black. While the Dominion believed that Ramlock intended to prepare Golarion for an invasion by their forces, Ramlock was actually acting in his own interests. He attempted to merge the planets Octurne and Golarion, so Octurne might awaken as a new Great Old One, leaving the ruined corpse of Golarion behind for Ramlock to rule over. The heroes of these events were a collection of agents of the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye, a secret society on Golarion dedicated to opposing occult evil. These heroes eventually traveled to Ramlock's self-made demiplane, where they came face to face with the Ashen Man himself, though they had no context at the time for who he was, or what part he had to play in the events they were opposing. In truth, the Ashen Man had little to no direct involvement in Ramlock's plot, but was interested enough to take up a position of close observation, and to interview the heroes attempting to undermine Golarion's impending doom. In this encounter, the Ashen Man asks the heroes a series of questions about their motivations, and their assessment of the value of Golarion's survival. As he listens to their responses, the Ashen Man comments on the inevitability of their answers, that the answers they give are those which he had foreseen, and that opposing the doom of Golarion is much the same, opposition to that which has already been written in the Fates. Starting in 4719 AR, the Ashen Man began making several appearances to scholars associated with Absalom's Arcanumerium. This began when Jude Tarashem, an accomplished wizard and a member of Absalom's wise council, experienced a terrifying encounter with a 10-foot cloaked figure in an alleyway. This figure declared that he would soon visit Golarion, then granted her a vision of Absalom crumbling to ash. Jude has been plagued with that same recurring vision ever since, and can only sleep through the nightmares with the aid of powerful drugs. What Jude has thus far failed to realize, however, is that her initial encounter was nothing more than a sham, and that her recurring nightmares are the result of malicious arcane tampering by one of her colleagues. Kralt Grisham is a powerful illusionist at the Arcanumerium, and holds a secret passion for the study of fear and panic. As an experiment, he began plaguing Jude with visions of the Ashen Man, a figure he read about in an obscure text. He then supplemented this initial vision with recurring nightmares, to examine the long-term effects of sustained fear and stress upon his victim. Kralt, however, recently began having visions of his own. nightmares of the Ashen Man turning back upon Kralt himself. He's concerned that Jude has discovered his machinations and is seeking revenge. However, the Ashen Man is far more than the rumored subject of study in an old book. Kralt has, in fact, drawn the Hundun's attention, and the visions he's now experiencing are far more real. Also in the Arcanumerium, the scholar Marin Fuln has been tracking reports on behalf of his allies in the Pathfinder Society. An increasing number of field reports have turned up in recent years which describe a figure matching the Ashen Man's appearance. Many of these reports take the form of prophecies which failed to come true upon the death of Eredin. Alarmingly, most of the prophecies involving the Ashen Man related to large-scale disasters, or even apocalypses. While these prophecies are largely considered null and void in the Age of Lost Omens, other reports have begun to come in describing new appearances of the Ashen Man outside of the context of prophecy. If the Ashen Man is still associated with the end of the world, this resurgence in activity could herald dangerous events on the horizon. Finally, most recently in 4724 AR, a small cult devoted to the Ashen Man rose to prominence in Kintargo. This cult misinterpreted the Ashen Man as a vengeful aspect of Asmodeus, but the Ashen Man himself had little issue with allowing this misconception to persist. The cultists of the Ashen Man spread fear and terror throughout Kintargo for months, and acted as a proxy for the larger cult of Norgorber in the city. The cult was eventually wiped out by the heroes of the Curtain Call adventure path, and their members were either killed or scattered to the wind. And that's it. That's everything we know about the Ashen Man, the mysterious harbinger of doom who's been lurking in the dark corners of Golarion for centuries. Without going into too much detail, the Ashen Man plays an important role in the Revenge of the Runelords adventure path, so I thought it would only be fair to give you all a rundown on exactly who he is and what he's been doing. Tomorrow, I will wrap up my Merry Little SinMas series with So You Want to Play Revenge of the Runelords, my video player's guide for the most recent AP in the legendary Runelords series. I hope you check it out. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all a Merry Little SinMas.